cheating wife's lube with poison ivy juice. In college, I met the woman who I thought was my one. We dated for about 2 years and had a big wedding after a 10-month engagement. Her family was pretty well-to-do in a small southern town. We were both continuing our educations, and I was also working to support us. I was pursuing a master's in engineering while she was finishing her doctorate in anthropology. Over the summer, an opportunity came up for her to make some extra money going as an aide on a religious studies trip to Jamaica. I didn't hesitate when she asked me about it. I mean, she was going to get to visit Jamaica and get paid for it. I saw no downside other than missing her being at home for 6 weeks. Little did I know at the time, but she had been passionately hugging the professor. He had hung out with us, smoked my weed, and drank my effing beer. I considered him a friend who arranged the trip for a couple of months, and it was a getaway for them to bang all over the island. I, clueless and happy, spent those weeks while she was gone taking extra shifts, so I could match what she made in our accounts and surprise her. One moron, right? One of the students from the trip actually seeked me out to clue me in. I didn't believe him until I started looking for evidence on my own. I broke down and checked her text while she was sleeping, and nothing was there. There were a few voicemails, so I decided to listen, and there it was. A message from that giant butthole saying how exciting it was that I almost caught them. I opened up her laptop and hit the emails after that. It was piles and piles of this stuff, making fun of me for not knowing, hugging passionately in our bed, and laughing about it. There was so much, and I was so heartbroken. Still too hurt to take any action, I was lost. I had no idea what to do. So I sat on it for a couple weeks and acted as normally as I could. I noticed everything now. I felt so stupid for not seeing it before. So many signs. One stuck out in particular. I noticed that our stash of homemade weed lube, if you've never tried it, I'd highly recommend giving it a go, was going down even though we weren't hugging passionately. It was obvious they were also using the fruits of my labor to get off more effectively. This really pissed me off. Like, unreasonably so. Hulk effing mad. It finally all hit me. I was a freaking joke to these buttholes, and they were using the lube I made and hugging passionately in my bed. I didn't hurt anymore. I just wanted to make them hurt. So while she was studying at the library, I made a new batch of lube. I put enough weed in it for it to smell like normal. But I also added some poison ivy from our backyard to the mixture. And after refilling the spray bottle we used for application, I waited. A few days go by and I'm working extra so I can be out of the house more. And bim, bait taken. That night after she goes to sleep, my plan goes into action. I sneak her phone away and delete my contact while replacing his phone number in her contacts as mine. I go to bed, but can't sleep because it feels like I'm 5 and tomorrow is Christmas. Dawn arrives and she's in the shower. I get a text. I'm super itchy. Are you okay? Now, Lord. Now is my time. I text her back. Look, I thought it had cleared up, but I guess I had a flare-up. I'm sorry, but I've got herpes and I guess you do now, too. I heard this girl squeak in the shower. I'm covering my mouth, nearly losing it. I went on to text her as the professor. That was time to end things now. A new semester was about to start, and I kind of have a little crush on another TA. I wanted her mad. This is a woman that never got told no growing up and never had to deal with rejection, let alone from a balding dude in his 50s with herpes. When she got out of the shower, it was obvious she had been crying, but I could see the anger in her eyes. I could see how uncomfortable she was, squirming at the table, drinking coffee, and mulling the situation over. Another little nudge is what she needed. The reply she got to her pages and pages of anger and sadness was, "Thanks for the good times, but can you keep this a secret between us? I don't want to ruin my chances with anyone else." She's flush with anger now, just seething. She gathered her keys and headed out the door without even saying goodbye. I knew where she was going. I booted up her laptop and set it to reformat, deleting her dissertation and any notes pertaining to it before following her to campus. I parked a few lots over and rush over to his office where I find her screaming at him for giving her herpes. There's a lot of people there. Professors, aides, students, other faculty. I'm dying. He is beyond embarrassed and confused as anything. She is ugly crying in front of her peers. I'm in heaven. I didn't even care that people were going to think I had herpes too. The fallout was apocalyptic in their department. He lost his job due to code of conduct at the university. We got divorced the following year. The state law was that we had to be separated for 1 full year before being granted a divorce. I got to keep most of the assets, primarily savings and not a ton, but I worked for it. She never finished her doctorate and went on to be a perpetually pregnant housewife that sells Herbalife on Facebook, and he teaches high school now. Revenge with a swarm of bees. So here's the necessary background. I come from a family of sideline beekeepers, so I've been around bees my whole life. I have no problem being around creepy crawlies, and bees tend to be comforting in some way for me. It isn't like a pet though, more like a distraction from the real life. Anyways, I'm weird, and I like bees more than people. My dad is a sideline apiarist, so selling honey and queen bees is his side business. His main job is as an architect. I started dating a junior athlete in high school 2 years ago. He was everything I wanted when I was going through my teen fantasy phase. Tall blonde, smelled great, and he was an absolute delight to be around. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Harris. Harris was a bit of a troubled kid. I knew his parents put pressure on him, but that often led to outbursts at others. Since I, his lovely bee-obsessed girlfriend, was there at all times, I was the easiest to lash out at. Now, I'm not a short girl by any means, but Harris, like I said, was tall. At the time, I hated to admit that I was truly afraid whenever he decided to pick on me. But these events were so far and few that I ignored them because, he was amazing. We had some of the best times, and he was the first and only guy I have ever passionately hugged with. I'll spare you the details, but I thought it was going to be a secret between me and him. My honeymoon with him died a year later when he invited me to senior prom. I was a sophomore at the time, so I was super stoked to go. I picked out a dress and everything, feeling on top of everything. I was a bit on the heavy side back then, but not to the point it was noticeable unless I took off my clothes. Still dress. Something that isn't pants. I was excited. Who cares about arm fat? Well, apparently all of Harris' friends do. I almost forgot that these guys and girls were athletes, and I was not. As soon as I caught up with them, I found that they were in a total joking mood. Great, I love jokes. So, OP, Harris really loves you, said one of his friends. I know, I could act smug, I grinned. Yeah, I replied, and I love him too. Cue a kissing interlude here. His friend rolled her eyes, said something about me being weirdly cute. Harris grinned and took a break from me to talk. Oh, really? Cute. Like what? Baby hippo. She probably meant this in jest, but I thought it was unusual. Maybe I was self-conscious or something, and thought it was a fat joke. I didn't laugh, and I could feel my face go hot. I picked up a Coke earlier, and I was pretty sure it was heating up in my palms. True, Harris said in his ever-so-suave voice as he wrapped his arm around me. His hand traveled down the side of my dress, and he squeezed my stomach. OP is my baby hippo, and I saw all of it. All of it. Excuse me, you mean all of her. And I'm right here, regretting to have ever come here. Insert more laughter here. Then their conversation took off. And, it went from 0 to 100 really quick. He spilled the honey and told his friends, all 5 people here, about how me and him did the sexy business. He said some off-putting comments about my body and the parts he wanted to touch. I was trying my hardest not to cry, since this could have just been a harmless joke on their part. Needless to say, I wasn't having any of it, so I excused myself. Not to the bathroom, but home. I called my dad to pick me up, and not to let Harris' dad know. I wasn't in the area during spring break. My dad flew me and my brother, a year younger, 15 at the time, out to Pennsylvania for vacation. We went to the Hershey's chocolate factory and all, and I had a chance to clear my head. As far as I can remember, this was the last time my dad was actually pleased with me. When we returned in 10 days, Harris popped in a visit at a time he knew my dad wouldn't be home. My brother was, as he usually was, playing Minecraft on his PC in his room. I thought Harris visited to apologize for the whole baby hippo thing, but I was grossly mistaken. He punched me in the gut. I'd never been punched before up until now, and it was truly horrible. Not only did it hurt like heck, but it nearly made me puke and knock the wind out of me at the same time. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shouted at me. He said that I shouldn't have left him at prom, how I shouldn't have embarrassed him in front of his friends, and that I should have called him when I was in Pennsylvania. My brother came running down the stairs when he heard the commotion. I had this urge to bend over and stay bent over, so I couldn't really focus on him. All I knew is that he went after Harris, cursing, shouting, and crying. I ran the other way the best I could, trying to breathe first and foremost. It was hard to do anything or think straight with this horrible taste in my mouth and nasal cavity, like I'd thrown up inside my nose or something. It was gross, and it certainly pissed me off. Going for my phone was difficult, since Harris had already found his way for my brother, begging me not to call the cops. I almost got the landline too, but Harris snatched it from my hand. He broke the cover, took out the batteries, and then proceeded to beg again. This time he didn't touch me, and I told him to get the heck out. I cleaned up the house so my dad wouldn't see any of this. This was going to be my first and last fight with Harris, or so I hoped. At least he didn't check the landline. My brother was more injured and certainly devastated. He couldn't even ask if I was okay, and I took it as he knew I wasn't, and only proceeded to cry. He really looked up to Harris. Let's go about 5 hours ahead, 10 p.m., and I am still seething. We found out my brother had sprained his wrist, so we rigged up some sort of easy-to-remove ice thing. My dad was a hard man, so I knew he would get upset at first when he saw the mess we'd gotten into. I can't remember what my intention was, whether I was going to tell him about Harris or not. I knew that he would be back the day after, so I had to exact my revenge right now. I shut the doors, windows, and waited for my brother to go to sleep. Now come the tidy bits. I shimmied into the other set of beekeeper clothes, the ones my mom wore when she was around to check on the apiary. I got the veil, the gloves, the boots, Gotta be prepared. That night was particularly cold, and it felt very unreal. I was unpacking thousands of honeybees, moving them around until I got the right number of frames, all under my dad's nose, and I was going to release them on a living human being. We had roughly 30,000 bees per beehive, and around 150 hives. Like I said, it was a side business, and we needed honey. I knew at the time that 1,000 or so bee stings could kill, and I wasn't planning on going to jail. I was just going to make this hurt like crazy. I isolated a fair number of bees between 2 frames with a bit of difficulty. There were maybe 900. 950? Not all of them would sting him, but I wanted to get him back for everything. Who punches their baby hippo, right? Once I had my bees in place, I set the single frame in its own hive closer to home. I called him and told him that I wanted to work some things out with him. No violence, none of that stuff. I lied through my teeth, telling him I won't tell my dad and that I was doing all right. He showed up 5 minutes later and stepped up to my door. The porch light was the only thing illuminating him, and the rest of the place was dark. I removed the frames from the hive. I walked up behind him, beekeeper boots squeaking on the steps, frame in my hand. "Hi, Harris," I said. I thought it would sound cool, but I was crying. My voice broke. Voice breaking was the least of Harris' problems at the moment anyway. I was holding 2 open frames with almost 1,000 bees. Some of them were flying around, but I was fully protected. Harris, not so much. I swatted him with 1 frame and thrusted the other against his mouth, hoping I could get at least a single bee between his lips. A single bee sting hurts like crazy, and will hurt for a while. And the thing about bees is that they're part of a true hive mind. A single bee dies, and all bees in the area go into defensive mode, stinging at whatever flesh and deter whatever attacker they can find in order to protect the hive. The frame I had here is with likely killed a few. The resulting scream was insane. I had never heard him scream before. I almost expected the bees to fly away and hide in some other hive, but no, when bees defend, they really defend. It didn't help that Harris wore short sleeves and had his neck and face exposed, so the bees went for that. Fortunately for him, none of the bees went inside his mouth like I intended. They weren't stupid and wouldn't do that. Instead, they just kept stinging him. I ended up falling down the stairs and scrambling into the dark, looking to get away from him. Looking back, though, he was in no position to fight, and I shouldn't have run. But I did, and I got to watch him try to fight his way through a cloud of bees. I think he learned that killing 1 bee won't scare the swarm. Aftermath, he didn't die. He just took forever to recover, and he was pockmarked by scars. Me, I actually spent time in jail, but I wasn't sentenced. My dad was extremely upset at me for using bees as weapons, and I'm currently in the process of working off that payment. He doesn't look at me the same anymore, and I feel really bad about that. I wish I'd just gone to him at first.